My boss's son fired me right after I presented a $2 million deal. You didn't include me, so you're out, he snapped. I walked out with my head high. The next day the client called, furious. Where's the woman who closed the deal? What followed made the boardroom erupt because the deal was signed with. My name is Mallory Reese. I'm 44, live on the north side of Chicago, and for most of my adult life, I've prided myself on being the kind of woman who didn't flinch under pressure. You know the type. Always has a backup plan. Shows up 5 minutes early. Can negotiate with sharks and still smile politely while doing it. I worked in consulting for over a decade, and I was damn good at it. I wasn't always like that. A messy divorce 7 years ago shook something loose in me. It stripped away the illusions I had about family and permanence, and what's left now is a woman who works hard, plays little, and trusts no one unless they've proven themselves twice. It was a Tuesday. Rainy, gray, the kind of weather that makes you wish you worked from home, or at least had the sense to take a personal day. I was holed up in Brew and Bloom, my little caffeine haven on Clark Street. Fireplace going, jazz humming low in the background, the smell of espresso and clove muffins floating in the air. My laptop was open, spreadsheets and pitch decks cluttering the screen. I had bags under my eyes, and my third black coffee of the morning sat cold next to my notebook. The numbers I was reviewing weren't just important. They were everything. A $2 million deal I had been nurturing for months was about to come to a head. Halberd Systems, a mid-sized but powerful tech company, was finally ready to sign. And I had earned that deal every step of the way. I didn't sleep much that week. Too many moving pieces. But Mira Young, Halberd's COO, was a straight shooter. I respected her, even liked her. She didn't play games. She wanted results, and I gave her that. I closed the deal in a small corner conference room, just the two of us, late in the afternoon. Mira leaned back in her chair, looked me square in the eye, and said, "You've got more grit than any man I've done business with this year, Mallory. You saw through our mess faster than our internal team did." I smiled, grateful but exhausted. "Appreciate that, Mira. I just wanted to make sure you felt confident before we moved forward." She pulled out the folder, signed the last page, and handed it to me with a nod. "Consider it done. You earned this." I drove back to the office with the signed contract in the passenger seat, still warm from her hand. I stared at it during every red light. It felt like holding a golden ticket, the kind that could change everything. After 11 years at Ascend Partners, I finally felt like this was the moment I would step into the leadership circle fully, not just as the reliable senior consultant who could close deals, but as a woman whose name mattered in the firm's future. I walked into the office that evening with rain soaking my coat and a half smile on my face. Most of the team had cleared out already, but the lights in the executive wing were still on. I didn't expect to find Tate Langford sitting at my desk. He was leaning back in my chair like it belonged to him, legs crossed, some smug smirk curling at the corner of his mouth. I stood there in the doorway, keys still in hand, unsure if I was supposed to laugh or ask him what the heck he was doing. "Tate, what are you doing in my office?" He stood up, adjusted the cuffs on his designer shirt, and nodded toward the guest chair. "Sit down. We need to talk." I blinked. "Talk about what you didn't include me in the Halberd pitch." My head tilted slowly. "Excuse me, you heard me. That was a high-level deal, Mallory. I'm head of strategic partnerships now. You should have looped me in Tate. I've been working that deal for 6 months. It didn't require you. Legal was involved. Finance was in the loop. Everyone who needed to be there was there. Everyone but me. And I'm telling you, that's a problem. You've got to be kidding me." He pulled a crisp white envelope from his back pocket and dropped it on my desk. "You're being terminated." Effective immediately, I stared at the envelope, then at him. My mind couldn't quite catch up. "You're firing me." For bringing in the biggest deal this firm's had in years, he straightened his tie and said, "You went around me. That's not how we do things. You've built good work here, Mallory, but the culture's shifting. We're streamlining leadership." My jaw clenched. I wasn't sure whether to scream or laugh. I picked up the envelope, tore it open, and skimmed the letter. My name, termination date, no cause, no thank you. "You had this ready before I even closed the deal." He didn't deny it, just raised his brows like that was irrelevant. "Clear out by the end of the day," he said. "I don't need until the end of the day," I said, standing. "I'll be gone in an hour." He didn't say another word. Just walked out like a man who just won a chess game he didn't know how to play. I sat there for a while. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just sat. Then I picked up my phone and texted Mira. "Out at Ascend. Long story. Someone else will follow up soon." Wishing you all the best. 2 minutes later, she called. What the heck happened? Short version. New leadership priorities. She paused, then asked slowly, wait, are you telling me you're no longer with the firm? That's right, no. No. We signed with you, Mallory. Not your firm. You. I trusted your vision. You leaving changes everything. I sighed. I appreciate that, Mira, but there's not much I can do. She was quiet for a beat. Then she said, you know what? No. I'm pulling the contract. If you're not the one leading implementation, it's off the table. I'll call it legal. We're done with Ascend. That hit me like a wave. Not because I wanted revenge, but because someone finally saw me. Not the firm I worked for. Me. I didn't sleep that night. My daughter Brinley, who was home from college for a few days, noticed I looked off. We sat on the couch in silence for a while until she finally asked, are you okay? I lost my job, I said simply. She blinked hard. Why, they're crazy. That's one word for it. She nodded, quietly processing. You always told me that when people can't control you, they try to remove you. The next morning, my old friend and colleague Jared Nix called me out of the blue. We hadn't spoken in months, but he had heard whispers. Rumors travel fast in our world. He asked me to lunch. No small talk. Just got to the point. I have an idea, he said. What if we built something new? I stared at him. You're serious, Mallory. You just got fired for doing your job too well. I've been thinking about starting my own firm anyway. You bring Halberd. I've got 3 hot leads ready to go. Let's build it lean and smart. Just us, no politics, no kids with MBAs and daddy issues. I sipped my coffee. My hands trembled slightly. It was crazy. Stupid. Reckless. And for the first time in years, I felt like doing something reckless. Let me think about it, I said. Just don't take too long, he said with a smile. The market didn't wait. That night, I stood at the window in my kitchen, looking out at the quiet street. Snow had started to fall. Brinley was upstairs listening to music. I picked up the phone and called Corey, my ex-husband. He answered on the second ring. Hey, Mel. Everything all right? I need your opinion, I said. It's about work. That's new, he said. But okay. Shoot, I told him everything. The firing, Myra's call, Jared's offer. There was a long pause on the other end. He finally said, Mallory, I watched you build Ascend from nothing. You were the spine of that company. I always knew that. It's about time someone else did too. If you've ever had a moment to bet on yourself, this is it. His words hit deeper than I expected. We didn't always communicate well when we were married, but sometimes he saw me more clearly than anyone else. By Friday, Reese and Nix Consulting had a bank account, a temporary office space, and 1 signed client. By the second week, we had 3 folding tables, 2 borrowed office chairs from Jared's garage, and more coffee than any 2 people should consume in a workday. I'd wake up at 6, tie my hair back, throw on whatever clean blazer I could find, and be in that tiny office before the sun finished rising. Jared would get there around the same time, usually with some terrible fast food breakfast sandwich and a list of updates on his prospects. The first few days were electric. We were building something that belonged to us. No gatekeepers. No egos. Just real work. But it didn't take long before the tremors from Ascend started to reach us. 2 of our former colleagues reached out quietly. One was Mason Geller, who handled client data systems at Ascend, and the other was Priya Dandekar, their senior project coordinator. Both were veterans. They knew the work inside and out, and I had trusted them for years. Mason messaged me first. You didn't deserve what happened, he said. The office has been tense ever since you left. Clients are asking questions. Tate is trying to pretend nothing happened, but he's clearly in over his head. Priya said nearly the same thing in her email. It feels like a vacuum opened the minute you were gone. I don't think anyone really understands how much you held everything together. I'm exploring my options. If you ever build something, let me know. That stopped me in my tracks. We hadn't even officially launched yet, and already there was a quiet exodus forming behind the scenes. Not because we were stealing people, but because people were watching. Waiting, trying to escape the mess. Jared and I talked about it late one night. We were still at the office, exhausted, staring at the whiteboard covered in scribbles. I never wanted to poach people, I said. We're not poaching, Jared replied. We're building a lifeboat. If people want to jump in, let them. That stuck with me. By week 3, Halberd's integration was underway. I spent entire days at their downtown headquarters, meeting department heads, mapping workflow structures, and training middle managers. Mira stopped me in the hallway one day and said something I didn't expect. I've already had 3 of my peers ask who helped us transition so fast. They're impressed. I gave them your name, not your firm. Yours. It took everything in me not to cry at that moment. I thanked her and kept walking. But those words meant something. Back at Ascend, Tate must have sensed the tide shifting. An article dropped in a local business journal titled "Quiet Shakeup at Ascend Partners Raises Questions About Leadership." It was mostly speculation, but buried halfway down was a quote from an anonymous source. The decision to let Mallory Reese go stunned a lot of people. It wasn't just abrupt. It was short-sighted. She was the face of client success here. Tate's picture was featured at the top, standing next to his father Calvin in a forced-looking PR photo. He looked like a kid in his dad's shoes. Which, essentially, he was. A week later, Mira forwarded me an email she'd received from Ascend's sales team. They offered us 15% off to come back, she said. I told them to go to hell. I didn't even know how to react. All I could do was sit down and breathe for a minute. But what I didn't expect was the voicemail. It came through at 8:12 on a Thursday night. I was at home, cooking pasta, music playing softly, trying to reclaim some kind of rhythm to my evenings. My phone buzzed, and I let it go to voicemail. When I finally played it, my entire body tensed. It was Calvin Langford. Mallory, he said in that slow, practiced tone of his. I wanted to talk. This whole thing. I was not aware of how it unfolded. I should have been. We need to discuss what happened and what might still be possible. I'll be at my office tomorrow at 10. If you're willing, stop by. I played it twice. Then I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at the dining room table, staring out the window at the dark city skyline. My hands were shaking a little. Not because I was afraid, but because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. Brinley came down from her room and saw me sitting there. Everything was okay. I played the message for her. She tilted her head. Are you going to go? I don't know, I said. You should, she said without hesitation. If for no other reason than to show him that you're not the same person they walked all over. Look him in the eye. That's closure. Even if you don't need it, I looked at her for a long time. You're a lot like your mother, I said. She grinned. I'll take that as a compliment. The next morning, I got dressed like I used to for big meetings. Black slacks, dark green blouse, tailored jacket. I brushed my hair out properly, did my makeup with care, and walked into the Langford building at 9:59. The receptionist looked surprised to see me but didn't say anything. She buzzed me up. Calvin's office hadn't changed. Still wood-paneled, still lined with framed certificates and dusty old trophies. He stood when I entered, older and thinner than I remembered, but his presence hadn't diminished. Mallory, he said, offering a hand. Thank you for coming. I took it. Firm shake. No emotion on my face. You said you wanted to talk. So he gestured for me to sit. First of all, I want to apologize. I should have never allowed Tate to make unilateral decisions like that. Especially not when it comes to someone as crucial as you. The board has been vocal, to say the least. I said nothing. He continued. We've lost 3 clients since you left. 2 more are in review. The Halbert account alone was a massive hit. The board believes we made a critical error. I believe that too. I watched him closely. So what now? He sighed and leaned forward. I want to offer you a path back. Not in your old role. Higher. Leadership. Autonomy. A seat at the table. Your own team. I'll even approve a contract that guarantees your authority in writing. For a moment, I just stared at him. All those years, I had imagined what it would feel like to be offered that kind of power here. Now that it was in front of me, it didn't feel like power. It felt like a cage made of gold. I let the silence stretch out a little longer. Calvin sat across from me with that seasoned executive look, the kind of expression that says I have made mistakes, but I am here to clean them up. It was the face of a man used to control, used to being the one who picked up the phone and made problems disappear. But it was not a problem he could fix with a few apologies and a corner office. You know, Calvin, I said slowly, I gave more than a decade to this company. I gave my nights, my weekends, my marriage, sometimes even my sanity. I stayed through mergers, staff cuts, and client disasters. I was loyal to this place long after it stopped being loyal to me. He looked down at his folded hands, but said nothing. The day Tate fired me, I did not just lose a job. I lost respect for a place I had helped build. And you let that happen? He looked up again, meeting my eyes with something close to shame. I did, he admitted softly. I trusted him to make the right call. I was wrong. I see that now. I wish I had stepped in sooner. You did not step in at all, Calvin, I replied, and now you are bleeding clients, and suddenly I am valuable again. That is not leadership. That is damage control. He leaned forward. Mallory, let me make this right. You were the best thing that ever happened to this company. I should have made you a partner years ago. Let me fix that now. Let me give you what you earned. What I earned, I repeated. You think a title and an apology erases the way I was shoved out the door like deadweight. He was quiet. His jaw flexed like he wanted to argue, but knew he had no ground to stand on. I stood slowly smoothing my jacket. The view behind him showed the skyline I had looked at 1,000 times from that same office window. But it did not look the same anymore. You are offering me power now because you are scared of Calvin. Not because you believe in me. And I am not interested in being a consolation prize. Mallory said softly as I turned at the door. You had your chance. And you gave it to someone who thought he could fire me like I was an intern who forgot to copy someone on an email. I am not coming back. I am not asking for a seat at your table. I am building my own, and then I left. When I stepped out into the street, the cold wind hit me square in the face, but it felt good. Like fresh air. Like something was waking up inside me. Back at our little office, Jared was waiting with a big grin on his face and a stack of printed documents in his hand. Guess what he said? We just got a signed letter of intent from Manderley Biotech. That is client number 4. And they're big. Like a potential anchor client, I took the papers from him and scanned them quickly. How did we even land on their radar? Apparently Mira knows their CFO. She passed on our name and said you were the real deal. They looked us up. Then they looked up Ascend. Apparently the contrast was enough to make the decision easy. I laughed once at a short disbelieving sound. They want a kickoff call Monday, Jared added you, and always he grinned. You look like something happened. How did your little reunion with the Langfords go? Exactly how you would expect, I said. He offered you the moon hum, more like a used castle with water damage, Jared chuckled. And I shook my head. No deal. I am not going backward. That is what I wanted to hear. The weekend passed in a blur. Meetings, proposals, strategy planning. Brinley sat on the couch working on her laptop while I scribbled ideas on napkins. She watched me carefully at one point and said, I have not seen you like this since I was 10 and you were up all night building a pitch for that auto parts company. But now you actually look happy. Not just busy. I glanced over at her and smiled. That is because for once I am not trying to prove anything to anyone but myself. She nodded. Keep going, Mom. You are on fire. Monday morning we met with Manderley Biotech. The CFO, a sharp woman named Rena Maddox, had already done her homework. She came into the call asking questions that told me this was no casual conversation. She meant business. What sold me was the way you handled Halbert. Rena flatly said, Mira said you executed in 3 weeks what Ascend could not figure out in 3 months. We do not have time for half measures. We need results. You will get them, I said simply after the call. Jared looked at me with something between pride and disbelief. Do you realize what we are doing right now? Yeah, I said slowly. I think we are proving them all wrong. He leaned back in his chair, arms behind his head. Feels good, does it not? Better than I thought it would, but the storm was not over. Not yet. Later that week, a letter arrived by courier. It was from Ascend's legal department. Jared opened it first and passed it to me without a word. I placed the letter down on the desk carefully, like it might bite if I moved too fast. Jared was pacing across the office, arms crossed, muttering under his breath. They really think they can scare us with this junk, he said. Finally, this is a scare tactic. They know they are losing grip, and they want to rattle us. I leaned back in my chair and looked out the window. It was snowing lightly again, little flurries catching in the corners of the glass. My stomach felt tight, but not from fear. It was something else. Something deeper. A mix of anger and clarity. They never cared about ethics or loyalty to Jared. If they did, they would not be trying to spin this like we stole anything. He stopped pacing. You want to call a lawyer already ahead of you. I had reached out to a woman named Denise Kirkland a few months back when things first started feeling off at Ascend. She was sharp, tough as nails, and had a reputation for cutting through corporate nonsense like it was paper. I sent her a scan of the letter and called her right after. She answered on the second ring. Mallory. I was wondering when I would hear from you again. You were right, I said. They're coming for me. For us, tell me everything. I explained about the situation from the top. How I was fired without cause, how Mira pulled the Halbert deal, how we started Reese and Nix. How the clients came to us. How we never approached anyone. They found us. She let out a small laugh when I finished. They were bluffing. If they had a real case, they would not send a veiled threat. They would serve papers. But still, do not underestimate them. I will draft a formal response and hit them back with our own terms. Make it clear we are not backing down. And Mallory, yeah, good for you. Not many people walk away from a mess like that and come out building something stronger. Thanks, Denise. I hung up and looked at Jared, who was now sitting on the edge of the desk drumming his fingers. She is on it. I said so. We are not slowing down. Not for a second. The next few weeks blurred together. Long nights, early mornings, new contracts, endless calls. Manderley signed officially. Then another company in renewable logistics came on board. We moved out of the tiny office into a slightly larger one, still modest, but with actual doors and working heat. Word kept spreading. Former colleagues reached out asking if we were hiring. Clients forwarded our names. What started as a rebound turned into a ripple. We were not just surviving. We were growing. But it was not all clean wins. One evening as I was walking to my car, I saw Tate outside the Langford building. He was standing under the awning smoking something he tried to hide when he saw me. Well, while he said, "Look who is still in town," I stopped walking, looked him straight in the eyes. "Tate," he exhaled slowly and smirked. "I heard you have been busy. Heard you and Jared are playing CEO now. We are not playing," he scoffed. "Right. You think a couple of big contracts mean you are running a real company. Give it 6 months. You will be crawling back." I stepped forward. "You fired me because I made you feel small. I get that now. You needed to control something and I was in the way. But here's the thing. You fired the wrong person. Because while you are out here puffing your chest and hoping daddy saves your name, I am out there building a business the right way. And clients are choosing us because they trust me. Not because I begged. Because I earned it." He flinched for just a second. "Barely. But I saw it. You want to watch me crash? Tate, go ahead. Just know that when I rise it will be in the ashes of everything you threw away." I left him standing there in the cold. That night I went home and poured a glass of red wine. Brinley was already curled up on the couch with a book. "How was your day?" she asked. "Eventful," I said. "But good." She closed the book and looked at me. "You ever think maybe you were supposed to get fired?" "Sometimes," I said softly. "I think it was the only way I would have ever walked away." "You always said pain can be a catalyst," and she was right. It had been. A few days later, Jared called me into his office. He looked weird. Like he had not slept. "You are going to want to sit down," he said. "That is never good." "No, this is good. Huge, actually. A national retailer just reached out. One of their regional executives heard about our work through Halbert. They want a consultation next week. And if that goes well, how big is big enough to double our revenue in 6 months? I sat down hard. We are not ready for something that size. We will get ready. We always do. The meeting with the national retailer took place in a bright glass tower overlooking the river. Their team was sharp, no nonsense, and very aware of their market standing. They had a reputation for being selective, and we knew this was the kind of client that could take us from a respected boutique firm to a serious name in the national space. I walked into the room with Jared beside me, our presentation carefully refined, our pitch grounded in what we had already done. No smoke. No mirrors. Just results and proof. The executive leading the meeting, a woman named Daria Feld, looked at us with steady, assessing eyes the entire time we spoke. When it was over, she set her pen down and leaned forward slightly. "Your reputation precedes you. You came highly recommended from 3 different directions, including Halbert and Manderley. That does not happen by accident." I nodded. "We take our work personally. When we commit, we do not cut corners. We are not looking for volume. We are looking for partners." Daria studied me a moment longer, then smiled. "We will be in touch by the end of the week." 3 days later, she sent a signed engagement agreement. The number at the bottom made Jared go completely still when he saw it. "This is it," he said quietly. "This is the contract that puts us in a new league," and he was right. Everything changed after that. Over the next 2 months, we hired 5 new people, all former colleagues who had quietly slipped out of Ascend and into our orbit. Mason, Priya, 2 junior analysts I had mentored, even a marketing specialist from Myra's old firm. The office we had upgraded to was suddenly too small, so we leased a floor in a newer building that overlooked Millennium Park. It had glass-walled conference rooms and an espresso machine that worked better than anything I had at home. One afternoon, I was sitting in my new office finishing a quarterly forecast when I got an email that stopped me cold. Subject line: Public Inquiry. Ascend Partners Board. The message was from a journalist. They were putting together a feature on female-led startups disrupting traditional consulting spaces. They wanted to ask me a few questions about the transition from Ascend to my own firm, what led to the departure, and if I had any comments on the recent board shakeup at Ascend. Board shakeup. I forwarded the email to Jared with one line: "Look at this." He called me 5 minutes later. "You think this is because of us?" I think we started a fire they could not put out. The journalist and I spoke 2 days later. I chose my words carefully. I did not trash anyone. I did not play victim. I told the truth. I was let go from my previous position without cause. I built relationships. I executed contracts. I delivered results. But I was seen as too independent, too decisive. The firm shifted away from what I believed in. So I left and created something that reflected those values. When the article went live, it spread like wildfire through our circles. The title alone was enough to draw eyes, from termination to triumph, how one woman turned corporate rejection into a rising powerhouse. They quoted Mira, Jared, even Daria Feld. The final paragraph quoted me directly: "Power is not something you are given. It is something you reclaim when you stop asking for permission." That quote ended up in newsletters, on social media, even on some consulting firm roundtable sites. People who had not spoken to me in years reached out. Then came the gala. Every year, the Chicago Business Alliance held a formal industry gala. I had attended before as part of Ascend. It was where firms paraded their best talent, networked, showed off. This year, we got an official invitation. Reese and Nix was recognized as one of the fastest-growing firms in the region. We were being honored for innovation and leadership. The event was held in a ballroom on the 37th floor of the Langstone Hotel. Floor-to-ceiling windows, live jazz band, trays of wine and appetizers. I wore a navy satin dress Brinley helped me pick out. Jared was in a clean-cut tux, and we both looked like we belonged in the room. Halfway through the evening, I saw him. Tate. He was standing near the bar, surrounded by a couple of half-interested peers, laughing too loud. When his eyes met mine, I saw it. That flicker of discomfort. Recognition. Regret. I did not look away. An hour later, the awards ceremony began. Our name was called. Jared and I walked to the stage under applause. The spotlight was warm, the microphone steady. I kept the speech short. Professional. But I ended it with a note that made the room go quiet. Success is not always about being the loudest or the most aggressive in the room. Sometimes it is about listening, earning trust, owning your mistakes. And when doors close unfairly, it is not the end. It is the start of building your own people standing. Not all of them, but enough. When I returned to my table, I felt a tap on my shoulder. I turned around. It was Calvin Langford. He looked tired, older than I remembered, but still sharp. Mallory said, "I just wanted to say congratulations. You built something remarkable. You deserve it." "Thank you," I said simply. I was wrong about a lot of things. He added, "I should have stood up for you sooner." "Yes, you should have." He nodded and left it at that. Tate never came over. He just watched from the side of the room as I was greeted by colleagues, competitors, even board members who had ignored me before. No tantrum. No public breakdown. Just silence. That was enough for me. The week after the gala, everything moved faster than I expected. The article kept circulating, and so did our name. Invitations to panels, speaking events, interviews started rolling in. Jared and I had to hire a part-time assistant just to manage the inbox. But something else happened too. An email from Ascend's former CFO landed in my inbox. Short and to the point. Board requested a review of executive decisions over the past year. You were mentioned more than once. Several members are stepping down. Tate is no longer active in client-facing operations. That was all it said. No signature. No fluff. But I read it 3 times. No longer active. That meant one thing: he had been pushed aside. Whether it was the board, Calvin, or his own mistake catching up with him, it didn't matter. He was out of the way. Not fired. Not humiliated. Just irrelevant. And in the world of business, irrelevance is a slow exile. It was the most fitting ending for him. No drama. Just the soft closing of a door he had no key to anymore. The firm he tried to gatekeeper was now gasping for footing in a space we had claimed through results, not legacy. I closed my laptop and sat quietly at my desk. Outside the windows, Chicago pulsed on as always. Busy, beautiful, relentless. I sipped my coffee and smiled to myself, not in victory, but in calm. This was never about destroying anyone. It was about reclaiming the power I gave away over years of loyalty to the wrong people. It was about walking out with my head high when others thought I should bow. It was about proving that silence is not weakness and dignity is the loudest revenge. Later that week, we held our first full team meeting in the new space. 10 people now, all seated around a long table with real chairs and working lights. Brinley even came by, smiling as she took photos for the website update. I stood at the front of the room with Jared beside me, looking out at these faces, some familiar, some new, but all looking back with belief. I cleared my throat and said what I had been waiting to say since that rainy Tuesday when I left Ascend with nothing but a cardboard box and my name. We are not here because someone gave us permission. We are here because we stopped waiting for it. This company exists because every person in this room believed we could do more. Be more. And we will keep growing, not because it is easy, but because we remember what it feels like to be overlooked. And we will never do that to each other. They clapped, but more than that, they nodded. They understood. That night, after the team left and the lights dimmed, I stayed behind a while. Brinley was waiting at home with dinner, but I needed one more moment. Just me and the quiet. I walked over to the window and looked out at the skyline. Not searching for anything, just soaking in the view. No anger. No bitterness. Just peace. This was mine now. And I had earned every inch of it.